is this? Hello? Hello? Who is this? Hello? Hello? What's going on? Somebody, I need help. I have to get out of here. Where are you? What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Andy and on this channel we talk about audio, video, and tech. And in this week's episode, we're talking about 5 tips to help your videos look more cinematic and more engaging. Roll the intro. Alright guys, like I said, this week's video is all about tips on how to create more engaging and cinematic videos. I use that word lightly. I feel like cinematic gets thrown around a lot, but just things to keep in mind when you're shooting maybe a B-roll sequence or you're just trying to shoot maybe some cinematic landscape footage. These are just some tips that I have found the more that I shoot. If I keep these 5 things in mind, I'm usually happy with the result that I get. So let's jump into tip number 1, and that is camera movement. This is a great way to make your video feel more dynamic and immersive. So, you know, sometimes the shot might call for a locked off tripod shot where it's just, you know, still almost a still image. And that's great. But I found that just adding a slight bit of camera movement really pulls the viewer in, and it kind of draws your eye into the video a little bit more. Now there's 2 ways to do this. You can do it in camera by obviously moving the camera. You can do a pan, you can you know, kind of do a tilt up, you can come out from behind an object to do a reveal. Great ways to create some drama, but you can also do it in post as well. So if you're like me, I shoot solo 100% of the time. I don't have anybody else running other cameras, or if I want to film myself, it's usually got to be on a tripod. So obviously moving the camera on your own can be difficult in those situations, but I found some great ways to add movement in post, just to, again, draw your eye in a little bit. You know, the Ken Burns effect, which is available in pretty much every editor out there. You know, it always seems like maybe a cheesy effect to use, but if you use it just very subtly, subtly, is that a word? I don't know. Sparingly. Let's use sparingly. It can just draw your eye in a little bit. So if you've got a shot and you kind of do a slow, almost like a slow zoom in, it'll draw the viewer in. Likewise, if you do a slow pan out, it kind of opens up more of the scene and creates some more engagement. So like I said, tip number 1, camera movement. All right guys, tip number 2 is lighting. Lighting makes a huge difference in your videos, and not only making sure that you have enough light to properly expose your image, but having different lights at your disposal to create different moods and feelings. So you can create a lot of depth with lighting. You can create a lot of mystery. If you're looking for something kind of dark, cinematic, typically, you know, bringing your lights a little lower, maybe bringing them a little closer to your subject, keeping the background dark, and then also casting shadows on the face creates that mystery. You can also run a ton of lights and really brighten up the scene and create a really happy feeling. So lighting is huge. Lighting makes a big difference. If you're shooting outside, you're kind of subject to the light that's available to you. But if you're shooting in a controlled atmosphere like a studio, definitely think about lighting. And if you don't have money for softbox lights and LED panels, don't worry about it. You can find lamps to give you a really great effect. I find like LED bulbs aren't the best, but if you can find the old like incandescent bulbs, they give a nice warm glow. You can put a lamp in the background. They don't have to be expensive lights, but be creative with your lighting. Tip number 3 is speed. And now this when I say speed, most people think slow motion. Everybody loves those really super slow cinematic B-roll sequences that everybody puts on YouTube. I'm guilty of it as well. I love 120 frames per second slow-mo videos. It just looks awesome, but it does get overused quite a bit. Not everything should be in slow motion. When I say speed though, I mean using the slow motion sparingly, but also using speed ramping to kind of get through some of the more stale kind of footage and getting to the excitement. So speed ramps look awesome when you speed somebody up walking and slow it down right at the point of action. And then speeding back up right into the next scene. You can use speed ramps for transitions. You can use speed ramps just to create an emphasis on a certain action. But speed ramping and using slow motion is a fantastic tool. But again, I feel like use it sparingly. Not everything has to be slow motion. Tip number 4, color grading. Now, color grading is, I'm gonna say it's not easy. It is easy to slap a LUT on your footage and it looks okay, right? Like anybody can, put on a pre-applied LUT to footage, but it is really important that you color correct your footage beforehand. So going in, looking at your vector scopes, looking at your, RGB parade, making sure that your highlights are not blown out, making sure your shadows aren't crushed, adjusting your midtones to get your skin tones right. All of that should be done before applying a LUT or a look, basically. So if you go in, make those minor adjustments, depending on what cameras you're shooting on and what picture profiles you're shooting in, it may be quicker to get to a neutral place than others. For me, I shoot an S-Log on my Sony, and so for me, I do have to do a little bit more color grading. I have to bring in some contrast and adjust the exposure to get it to more of a neutral look, and then I apply my LUT, the look that I'm going for. So color grading is really important. Spend a lot of time in your software of choice, learning the color settings. It'll really, really help your footage. It also helps for me if I have something I've shot and I have a particular look in mind. It does help to go on Google and look up a movie reference. If you I love the way this movie looks, find a still from it, pull it up, and try to match it when you're color grading. Look at where their highlights are, look at where their shadows are, and try to match that look. DaVinci has a great tool inside where you can actually pull in a still and pull that color grade and apply it to your clips. Now it's not 100%, but it gets you really, really close. Final Cut, as far as I know, doesn't have anything like that. You're just gonna have to get close in the color grading yourself. But that is a great way to reference a look that you're going for. So tip number 4, color grading. Take some time, color grade your footage. All right, guys, the last tip in this video. Tip number 5 is sound design, and this is arguably the most important tip in this video. If you don't do any of the other tips, if you just focus on sound design, I promise you it'll take your videos from here, and it's just gonna bump it up to that next level. And when I say sound design, I don't mean shooting all the footage and throwing a track on it in the background. That is not what I mean. We can all do that. It works fine sometimes, but what I mean is by sound design is to think about the scene, where is the scene at, and add in the ambient sound that would be in that scene. If you're in a city, that's cars, brakes squeaking, traffic sounds. If you're in the woods, that's birds chirping, leaves crunching, wind blowing. All of that stuff, if you add those sound effects.
It's a sound effect.
If you add those sound effects in, it is gonna make the audience feel like they're right there with the subject. To make you feel like you're in the scene. And again, it's gonna pull you into that a little bit more. Without it, you just are like, yeah, this was really pretty footage with some nice music. Great, and that's fine. but it's not as engaging as if the audience feels like they're there. Now there's two ways that you can do your sound design. The first way is capturing the real sounds in that environment. So, putting a shotgun mic on your camera and trying to capture actual ambient sounds. Now I love doing that. However, sometimes that is not possible. You're out and it's a super windy day and you're just getting tons of wind noise in your microphone, or you can't get close enough to something to get the sound recorded correctly. That is when using stock sound effects comes in clutch, because again, we have those times where it's like, I have an idea in my head, this is how it sounded when I was there, but it didn't come through in camera. You can go in and find stock sound effects to add to your videos. Now, as kind of a bonus tip on top of the 5th tip for sound design, I would say don't just take a pre-recorded sound and slap it on your video. It may work sometimes, but it's not gonna be super realistic. You're gonna have to do some tweaking. And again, the more that I work in DaVinci Resolve, the more I've come to just love Fairlight in DaVinci Resolve. It's an entire audio suite with tons of effects, tons of plugins. You can buy, you can get third-party plugins that you can buy from all sorts of companies that make them, and you can do some tweaking to those sounds. Final Cut also has a bunch of built-in stock audio effects as well, and they do a pretty good job. Particularly like a low pass, a high pass filter goes a long way, a little bit of EQ, maybe some reverb. Those are things that you're gonna wanna experiment with when you add those to your sound effects to make them feel a little more realistic, give them some depth. So again, tip number 5, sound design. Don't skip it, use it. Use stock sound effects on top of capturing it in real life. Maybe combine the two, make something awesome. All right, guys, that is it for the 5 tips that I have for you. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, click the subscribe button down below. I've got a lot more content coming. And if you found the video helpful, please click the like button as well. That really helps me out. And drop me a comment. Let me know, give me a tip that you found has helped elevate your footage, or something that you weren't doing when you started out that you're doing now and you found it made a huge difference. I'm, always wanting to learn from you guys as well. But again, I appreciate you guys watching. That's it for me. See ya.